Have you ever felt completely helpless? Like the entire world was stacked against you, and there was absolutely nothing you could do about it? Imagine standing alone in a cage with thousands of people screaming against you. Imagine knowing that everyone watching believes you're about to lose everything. That's exactly what she was facing. But what happened next would change everything forever. This is the story of an American fighter who faced impossible odds, who went up against a woman the entire world was betting against her, and who delivered a moment so shocking, so powerful, that it would be replayed millions of times across the internet. And if you think you know how this story ends, I'm telling you right now, you don't. Because what's about to happen is the kind of moment that reminds us why we keep fighting, why we keep pushing, even when everyone says we can't win. Stay with me, because the best part is coming, and you absolutely cannot miss what happens next. Let me take you back to a time when the odds were completely stacked against one woman. Picture this, it's a championship fight night. The air is thick with tension. The crowd is absolutely roaring. Millions of people around the world are tuned in, watching, waiting to see what's about to unfold. But here's the thing that makes this story so incredibly painful to watch at first. Everyone in that arena, everyone watching online, everyone in the MMA community was convinced that the American fighter didn't stand a chance. Not a single chance. The opponent? A Brazilian fighting legend. A woman who had dominated the sport for years. A woman with an almost unbeatable record. A woman who had faced the best competitors in the world and had come out victorious time and time again. The Brazilian fighter was considered the favorite by every single sports analyst, every betting expert, every commentator on every major sports network. When you looked at the numbers, when you looked at her track record, when you looked at her training camps and her technique, there was simply no logical reason to believe the American had any possibility of winning this fight. And the American fighter knew it. She knew that every statistic pointed to her defeat. She knew that she was walking into that cage as the massive underdog. She knew that if she lost, which everyone expected her to, her career might never recover. The pressure was absolutely suffocating. The weight of everyone's expectations, or rather everyone's lack of expectations in her favor, was crushing down on her shoulders every single day leading up to that fight. Think about that for a moment. Think about what it's like to know that millions of people believe you're going to fail. Think about what it's like to train for months, to sacrifice everything, to push your body to the absolute limit, knowing that the entire world is counting down the days until you lose. That's the kind of psychological warfare that breaks most fighters. That's the kind of pressure that makes people quit before they even step into the cage. But this American fighter? She was different. She was quiet about it. She wasn't the type to talk trash or make big promises on social media. She didn't do interviews talking about how she was going to shock the world. She just trained. Day after day, week after week, month after month, she trained. She sparred with the best fighters in her gym. She studied every single fight the Brazilian competitor had ever had. She analyzed every movement, every technique, every weakness that could possibly be exploited. Her trainers were worried, though. During these preparation sessions, during the sparring matches and the training camps, they could see the fear in her eyes. They could see the doubt creeping in. Because no matter how much you prepare, no matter how hard you work, you still have to believe that victory is possible. And as the fight date got closer and closer, that belief was being tested in ways she had never experienced before. Let me paint you a picture of what those final days before the fight were like. Imagine sitting in a hotel room, alone, staring at your phone, scrolling through social media, and seeing post after post after post about how the Brazilian fighter was going to destroy you. Imagine seeing highlight reels of your opponent knocking out fighter after fighter, and realizing that you were about to step into the cage with that same person. Imagine lying awake at night, unable to sleep, your mind racing with thoughts of failure, of disappointment, of letting down everyone who believed in you. But here's where the story takes an interesting turn. Because while everyone was focused on the numbers, while everyone was focused on the statistics and the records and the odds, the American fighter was doing something different. She was studying something that no one else was paying attention to. She was watching the Brazilian fighter's previous matches with a completely different perspective. And slowly, over the course of weeks of analysis, she began to see something. A pattern. A weakness. A tiny opening that might just be her way to victory. The Brazilian fighter had an incredible technique. Her striking was phenomenal. Her grappling was nearly flawless. Her conditioning was world-class. But there was one thing that the American fighter noticed, something so small, so subtle, that it had gone completely unnoticed by everyone else in the MMA community. Every single time the Brazilian fighter got backed up against the cage, She followed the exact same sequence of defensive movements. It was almost like a dance that she had perfected so well that she wasn't even thinking about it anymore. She was doing it on autopilot. And that autopilot was her biggest weakness. The American fighter and her team developed an entire game plan around this one observation. They trained specifically for this scenario. They practiced counters to those automatic movements. They worked on timing. They worked on speed. They worked on precision. And slowly, over the course of those training sessions, something remarkable began to happen. The American fighter's confidence started to grow. It wasn't the kind of arrogant confidence that comes from trash talk or ego. It was a quiet, unwavering confidence that came from knowledge. From preparation. From understanding your opponent better than they understand themselves. But as the fight date approached, the media narrative only intensified. Sports journalists were writing articles about how the Brazilian fighter was going to steamroll the American. Podcasters were discussing whether this fight should even be happening, whether the American fighter was ready for this level of competition. Betting odds were putting the American fighter at such long odds that nobody was even bothering to bet on her. It seemed like the entire world had made up its mind. The Brazilian fighter would win. The American fighter would lose. And that would be the end of the story. On fight night, everything changed. The arena was packed to capacity. The Brazilian fighter entered first, walking to her corner with the confidence of someone who knew they were the favorite. The crowd roared in anticipation. Then the American fighter was called to enter the cage. And something incredible happened. Despite all the doubt, despite all the negativity, despite being the massive underdog, when she stepped into that cage, she had a look of absolute determination on her face. The bell rings. The fight begins. And immediately, the Brazilian fighter does exactly what everyone expected her to do. She comes out aggressive. She's striking hard. She's trying to establish her dominance early. She wants to break the American fighter's spirit right from the beginning. The American fighter is backing up, defending, staying calm, staying focused. The crowd is going crazy. This is exactly what everyone predicted. The Brazilian fighter is winning the early rounds decisively. But the American fighter is patient. She's waiting. She's studying. She's watching the rhythm of the fight. She's looking for that moment that she's been practicing for months to exploit. The Brazilian fighter is getting more aggressive. She's throwing combinations. She's trying to finish this fight early. She's pressuring the American fighter against the cage, and that's exactly where the American fighter wanted her to be. And then it happens. The Brazilian fighter does exactly what she always does. She falls back on that automatic sequence of defensive movements. She's so used to it, so comfortable with it, that she doesn't even realize she's doing it. But the American fighter is ready. She sees it coming. This is the moment she's been training for. This is the moment that could change everything. The American fighter moves with precision. She adjusts her stance. She times her movement perfectly. And then, in a moment that will be replayed millions and millions of times across the internet, she executes her counter with absolute perfection. What happens next is the kind of moment that makes MMA fans jump out of their seats. The Brazilian fighter, the favorite, the fighter who was supposed to dominate this match, suddenly finds herself in serious trouble. The American fighter's technique is flawless. The precision is incredible. The timing is absolutely perfect. And the Brazilian fighter doesn't see it coming. She doesn't have time to react. She doesn't have time to adjust. Before she can even process what's happening, the American fighter connects with devastating force. The impact is so powerful, so shocking, that the entire arena goes silent for just a moment. And then the Brazilian fighter goes down. She goes down hard. She hits the mat with a thud that echoes through the entire venue. The referee immediately moves in to check on her. The Brazilian fighter is not moving. She's not getting up. The referee looks at her, looks at the clock, looks back at her again. And then, without even letting the clock tick down, the referee stops the fight. It's over. The American underdog has won. And she's won in spectacular fashion. The stadium erupts. People are jumping out of their seats. Strangers are hugging each other. People are screaming. Some people can't believe what they just saw. It's the kind of moment where time seems to stop, where reality feels almost unreal, where everything that just happened seems impossible, but you just witnessed it with your own eyes. The American fighter falls to her knees in the center of the cage, and she breaks down. She's crying. She's overwhelmed with emotion. She's just accomplished something that absolutely no one believed she could do. Commentators are losing their minds in the booth. Sports analysts who just hours earlier were talking about how there was no way the American fighter could win are now scrambling to make sense of what they just witnessed. The Brazilian fighter is being carried out of the cage on a stretcher. She's completely unconscious. She's completely unable to believe what just happened to her. The favorite, the dominant fighter, the woman who was supposed to steamroll the American, has just been knocked out. Not just beaten. Not just defeated. Knocked completely unconscious in a matter of seconds. Let me give you the exact details of what happened, because this is where the story becomes absolutely incredible. The time? Seconds into the second round. The duration of the spectacular finish? Mere seconds. We're talking about a knockout so fast, so sudden, so shocking that most of the people who were distracted for just a moment missed it entirely. Some people looked away for a second to grab their drink or to check their phone, and when they looked back at the screen, the fight was already over. It was the kind of moment where you had to rewind it multiple times to fully understand what actually happened. This wasn't just a knockout. This was a statement. This was a message to every fighter in that division, to every fighter in the MMA world, and to everyone who had doubted this American fighter. She had proven something that statistics and odds and expert opinions couldn't predict. She had proven that sometimes, preparation beats experience. Sometimes, knowledge beats records. Sometimes, determination beats being the favorite. Sometimes, one person's unwavering belief in themselves is enough to overcome the entire world's doubt. The video of that knockout went viral instantly. It was shared millions and millions of times within just a few hours. People were watching it over and over again, trying to understand exactly what they had just seen. Some people were calling it the most impressive knockout they'd ever witnessed. Others were talking about it as one of the biggest upsets in MMA history. Nobody could stop talking about it. For days, for weeks, for months after that fight, people were still discussing it, still analyzing it, still showing it to their friends and family members. The American fighter's social media accounts exploded. She went from being relatively unknown to being recognized everywhere she went. People were stopping her on the street asking for pictures and autographs. She was getting interview requests from every major sports network. She was being invited to appear on podcasts and talk shows. But here's what made this story so special, what made it so meaningful to so many people, especially to women watching this unfold. It wasn't just about the victory. It was about the message of the victory. See, for so many women watching this fight, especially women in their 30s and 40s and 50s, this American fighter represented something bigger. She represented what's possible when you refuse to accept the narrative that other people create for you. She represented what's possible when you believe in yourself even when no one else believes in you. She represented what's possible when you put in the work, when you study your opponent, when you prepare with dedication and focus, and when you refuse to let self-doubt creep into your mind. Here's something that's really important to understand about this fighter. After her victory, in every interview she did, in every public appearance, she kept saying the same thing over and over again. She kept saying that she never doubted herself. Even when everyone else had given up on her, even when the odds were completely against her, even when every statistic suggested she would lose, she never let go of her belief that victory was possible. She studied the game. She worked harder than she'd ever worked before. She surrounded herself with people who believed in her. And then, when her moment came, she was ready. This is the kind of story that reminds us that life doesn't always follow the script that other people write for it. This is the kind of story that reminds us that being the underdog isn't a liability. It's an opportunity. Because when you're the underdog, people underestimate you. When you're the underdog, you're free to work quietly, to prepare without the pressure of being expected to win, to develop strategies that your opponent might not expect. The aftermath of this victory was almost as interesting as the fight itself. The Brazilian fighter, after recovering from her knockout, released a statement saying that she had underestimated her opponent. She said that she had become too confident in her abilities, that she had stopped evolving her techniques, and that losing in such spectacular fashion had actually been a wake-up call for her. She vowed to come back stronger, and to seek a rematch with the American fighter. The American fighter, for her part, didn't rest on her laurels. She didn't let one victory define her career. Instead, she took that momentum and she kept pushing. She kept training harder. She kept studying her craft. She kept improving. Because she understood that in MMA, just like in life, you can never become complacent. You can never think that you've achieved all you're going to achieve. There's always another level to reach, always another way to improve, always another challenge waiting for you. But here's what's really interesting about this story when you think about it from a larger perspective. This American fighter became an inspiration to millions of people around the world. Women started sharing her story on social media, talking about how her victory had inspired them to face their own challenges with more courage, with more determination, with more belief in themselves. People started telling stories about how they had been told they couldn't do something, and they had remembered this fighter's journey, and it had given them the strength to keep pushing. Parents started showing their daughters this fight, using it as a teaching moment about perseverance, about preparation, about the power of believing in yourself. Coaches started using this fighter as an example in their training sessions, talking about how her preparation had led to her victory. Young athletes started following her social media accounts, reading about her training methods, studying how she had approached her career. This one moment, this one victory in a cage that lasted just a few seconds, had rippled out into the world and touched thousands and thousands of lives. The sports media landscape changed after this victory as well. Analysts started paying more attention to the preparation that fighters did, rather than just looking at their records and statistics. Commentators started talking more about the psychological aspects of fighting, about the importance of belief and confidence. Journalists started writing longer, deeper articles about the training methods of fighters, about how they approached their opponents, about the mental game that separates champions from everyone else. What's particularly fascinating is how this victory changed the conversation around women in combat sports. Before this fight, there was still a lot of skepticism in some circles about whether women's MMA was truly equal in terms of skill, drama, and excitement compared to men's MMA. But this fight provided undeniable proof that women's fighting was just as compelling, just as technical, just as dramatic as anything you could see in men's fighting. The knockout was replayed on sports networks alongside the greatest knockouts in MMA history, regardless of gender. And it belongs there. It absolutely belongs there. The American fighter herself became a symbol of something that transcends sports. She became a symbol of the power of preparation, of the importance of never giving up on yourself, of the reality that statistics and predictions and odds don't determine outcomes. Preparation, dedication, and belief do. She became someone that people looked up to, not just as a fighter, but as a person who had faced overwhelming odds and had refused to accept the narrative of defeat that everyone was trying to impose on her. In the years that followed this victory, the American fighter continued to have an incredible career. She won more fights. She defended titles. She faced new challenges. She continued to evolve as a fighter. But nothing she ever did would eclipse that one perfect moment when she knocked out the Brazilian favorite in just seconds. That moment had transcended sports. That moment had become a symbol. That moment had become the kind of thing that people remember for the rest of their lives. If you were watching this fight live, if you were one of the millions of people who witnessed that knockout, you probably remember exactly where you were, exactly what you were doing, exactly how you felt when it happened. That's the power of a truly spectacular moment. That's the power of an upset victory. That's the power of preparation meeting opportunity at exactly the right moment. This story, this journey from complete underdog to absolute champion, is the kind of story that reminds us why we watch sports in the first place. It's not really about the physical competition. It's about the human spirit. It's about what people can accomplish when they refuse to give up, when they believe in themselves, when they put in the work, and when they're ready for their moment. It's about the fact that sometimes, the person nobody believed in turns out to be exactly the person who was capable of changing everything. So here's what I want you to take away from this story. Whether you're facing your own challenges, whether you're dealing with people telling you that you can't do something, whether you're the underdog in your own life situation, remember this American fighter. Remember how she studied her opponent. Remember how she stayed calm under pressure. Remember how she refused to accept the narrative of defeat that everyone was trying to impose on her. Remember how she waited for her moment, and when it came, she was absolutely ready. Life is going to throw curveballs at you. People are going to doubt you. Statistics and odds are going to suggest that you're going to fail. But here's the thing that this fighter understood, and here's the thing that separates people who achieve their dreams from people who don't. Those things don't determine your future. Your preparation determines your future. Your belief in yourself determines your future. Your dedication and your hard work and your refusal to accept defeat, those things determine your future. If you love this story, if you felt inspired by this American fighter's journey, then you absolutely need to stick around on this channel because we have so many more incredible stories just like this one. We have stories about other athletes who faced impossible odds and refused to back down. We have stories about fighters who developed incredible techniques that surprised the entire world. We have stories about underdogs who became champions. We have stories about the power of preparation, the importance of mental toughness, and the reality that greatness is possible for anyone who is willing to work for it. Subscribe to this channel right now so you don't miss a single one of these incredible stories. Because these aren't just stories about sports. These are stories about what's possible. These are stories about the human spirit. These are stories about people just like you, people who faced challenges, people who could have given up, but people who decided to keep fighting. And when you watch these stories, when you hear about these journeys, something magical happens. You start to believe a little bit more in yourself. You start to see your own challenges differently. You start to understand that being an underdog isn't a weakness, it's an opportunity. Turn on notifications so you get alerted the moment we post a new video. Because every single video on this channel is designed to inspire you, to motivate you, and to remind you of what's possible when you refuse to accept limitations. We dive deep into the stories of athletes who have accomplished incredible things. We analyze the techniques and strategies that made them successful. We explore the mental and physical preparation that separated them from everyone else. And we always focus on what you can learn from their journeys and apply to your own life. This channel isn't just about sports highlights and knockout videos, although we do have plenty of those. This channel is about understanding the principles that lead to success. It's about learning from the people who have pushed through fear, doubt, and overwhelming odds to accomplish incredible things. It's about getting inspired by real human stories of determination, hard work, and the power of never giving up on yourself. So please, subscribe to this channel. Join our community. Become part of a group of people who are committed to understanding what it takes to achieve greatness. Become part of a movement of people who refuse to accept the limitations that other people try to impose on them. Become part of something bigger than yourself. And thank you for watching this story about the American MMA fighter who faced the Brazilian favorite and knocked her out in seconds. Thank you for sticking with me through this entire journey. Thank you for allowing me to share this incredible moment with you. I hope this story inspired you. I hope it reminded you of what's possible. I hope it gave you the courage to face your own challenges with more determination and more belief in yourself. We'll see you in the next video.